Tonight, 3 hostages killed in Gaza in an Israeli military mishap. Also tonight, Prince Harry's legal win, triumphing in his phone hacking lawsuit. The impact of cost of living pain on South Australia's pre-Christmas retail rush. And a big first innings lead for Australia in control of the first test in Perth. Good evening, Richard Davies with ABC News South Australia. Israeli troops have shot and killed 3 hostages in Gaza in what military leaders admit was a tragic case of mistaken identity. The men were kidnapped during the Hamas raids on October 7th, but when found were fired upon by Israeli soldiers who mistook them as a threat. Their deaths have prompted protests and a pledge from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to bring the remaining hostages home safely.
They were meant to be rescued, but in the fog of war, there's a lot of room for error. The Israeli army says it shot and killed Alon Shamriz, Yotam Haim and Samar Talalka while fighting in central Gaza, mistaking them as threats.
We believe that the 3 Israelis either fled or were abandoned by the terrorists who held them captive.
Just last night, the mother of one of those killed still held hope at a vigil for hostages.
We yearned for a miracle, hoping that the hostages would be back for Hanukkah.
As the country learned of the news, hundreds took to the streets to express their anger. Protesters have been pressuring Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to prioritise the captives and pay any price for their release. The US, which has been critical of Israel's conduct, sent its national security advisor to the region.
We will continue to reiterate both publicly and privately our commitment to the notion that every innocent life should be sacred and should be protected.
Wael Dardou is a journalist and civilian wounded during an attack in Khan Yunis. He had lost his wife, son, daughter and grandson last month to an Israeli airstrike.
Something big exploded and knocked me to the ground.
His cameraman did not survive. Samar Abu Dakha is the 64th media worker to be killed during this war. Patients continue to stream in as Israel shelled Gaza's southern region from the air and sea. An estimated 19,000 Palestinians have been killed during the conflict so far. The UN says 70% of them are women and children. Majdi Sharab lost 2 of his teenage boys in an airstrike. He tried for an ambulance, but it couldn't come due to Israeli threats.
They went to save the neighbours in the street after a shell hit them, and then another shell hit them.
A father forced too soon to farewell his children. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
And the conflict is escalating beyond the borders of Israel and Gaza, with 2 of the world's largest shipping companies suspending all journeys through the Red Sea. The Danish company Maersk made the decision after 2 commercial cargo ships came under attack from Yemen's Houthi rebels. The Iranian-backed rebels claimed the ships were heading to Israel and failed to respond to earlier naval calls. The German transport company Hapag-Lloyd is also pausing its Red Sea operations. The United States says the Houthi attacks pose a threat to freedom of navigation and global trade.
While the Houthis are pulling the trigger, so to speak, they're being handed the gun by Iran. And Iran has a responsibility to cease these attacks, because these attacks, as I said before, are a fundamental threat to international law and to international peace and security.
An Israeli man has been hailed a hero for stopping a deadly shooting in Jerusalem, but his bravery cost him his life. Since the Hamas attacks on October 7, the Israeli government has pushed the message that guns save lives, but arming civilians to respond to emergencies carries its own risks.
It's an all too familiar sight in Israel, a family in mourning.
Yuval was my firstborn. I was very proud of him.
Moshe's son was killed during a Hamas terrorist attack at a bus stop in Jerusalem late last month. 2 Palestinian militants opened fire, killing 3 Israelis. Yuval, a former Israeli border policeman, ran across the road and shot the attackers.
He stopped his car, got out, crossed 4 lanes and charged, pulling out his gun in the direction of the terrorists.
But then soldiers mistook him for an assailant.
He first shouted at them. He raised his hands, dropped to his knees and surrendered.
Human rights groups have long accused the state of allowing a shoot-to-kill culture when Palestinians are involved. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has been distributing thousands of weapons to Israelis since Hamas's October 7 attack.
If I wouldn't sit here with a gun, our enemies would come and try to kill my daughter, unfortunately. So it's a necessity that we learned that we have to do in the last couple of weeks.
Hundreds of civilian emergency squads are being armed with little training and police oversight. This is one of the busiest streets in Jerusalem, and since October 7, more and more people around here have been carrying automatic weapons. Some people in Israel argue that this will make the country safer, but there are others who say that it will make the country more and more like America.
We know what the consequences from having too much guns, too much weapon around. The right has been riding the terror attacks in order to incite and to inflame for too many years.
The Israeli army is now stressing that its rules dictate not to shoot a person who surrenders.
Don't rush to shoot when the risk lessens. We don't shoot at someone who raises their hands.
A comment that comes far too late for the family of Yuval Kestelman. John Lyons, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Prince Harry has been awarded more than $250,000 in damages after winning his phone hacking lawsuit against a British publishing group. London's High Court found his privacy was breached when the newspapers unlawfully gathered information about him. The Duke of Sussex described the victory as a great day for truth and now wants police to launch a criminal investigation.
Prince Harry's battle against the British press brought him to the High Court. In June, he became the most senior royal in 130 years to sit in the witness box. After a dramatic 7-week trial, the Duke of Sussex won his case against Mirror Group newspapers. His lawyers read a statement on his behalf.
I've been told that slaying dragons will get you burned. But in light of today's victory and the importance of doing what is needed for a free and honest press, it is a worthwhile price to pay.
33 articles were presented to the court. The judge found 15 were obtained by phone hacking or unlawful means. MGN has unreservedly apologised and been ordered to pay more than $260,000. But Prince Harry hopes it doesn't end here.
I respectfully call upon the authorities to do their duty for the British public and to investigate bringing charges against the company and those who have broken the law.
The ruling claims phone hacking at the publisher was widespread and habitual from 1998 onwards, and suggests Piers Morgan, the Daily Mirror's editor for many years, was aware of the illegal practice.
I've never hacked a phone or told anybody else to hack a phone, and nobody has produced any actual evidence to prove that I did.
This ruling is a win for Prince Harry, but his battle against the British press is far from over. He has other cases against 2 separate British publishers before the courts. He'll be hoping for a similar outcome. The Prince's attempt to take down the tabloids will continue to play out before the courts. Isabella Higgins, ABC News, London.
Record Christmas sales are predicted for South Australia this year, with shoppers tipped to spend more than $4 billion in the lead-up to December 25th. But some small retailers say mounting cost of living pressures have tightened purse strings, hurting their pre-Christmas trade. Stephanie Richards reports.
Getting into the Christmas spending spirit. My backpack is heavy by itself. It's got a totem tennis set in there now and a yoga mat and a yoga ball and something else. So I'm actually struggling to make it home at the moment.
Rubbish. Yeah, it's just a good day out and it's nice to get the Christmas feels.
Rundle Mall is predicting record sales this festive season, despite mounting cost of living pressures.
Economists are suggesting that there'll be $86 million spent in the lead up to Christmas here in the city, and we've seen huge crowds already coming through.
Across town, market goers are also starting to stock up.
We've got our ham today, thank you. I'm starting with the prawns and then everything else to go.
The Australian Retailers Association estimates South Australians will spend just under $4.3 billion in the month leading up to Christmas, forecasting SA will be the only state where the festive spend beats last year's total. But small retailers say they're experiencing the opposite.
We're finding sales a little bit soft this year compared to previous years. I think it's a bit of a sign of the times. I think people are watching their spend. Obviously, cost of living's gone up quite a bit.
It has been a bit slower than it has been in previous years. So I think the weather hasn't helped. And also we're a bit hit by the car race not being good for us, and also Black Friday is not good for us. So that tends to be better for bigger businesses.
With just 9 sleeps to go until Christmas, retailers are urging shoppers to buy local.
All traders rely on Christmas sales to get them through because it does go a bit quiet through the January months.
Hoping for a last-minute splurge before Father Christmas comes to town. Stephanie Richards, ABC News.
Another 30 families have received ex gratia payments from the South Australian Government following the bungling of cochlear implants at Adelaide's Women's and Children's Hospital. 84 ex gratia payments have now been made, with just under $2 million handed out in total. An independent review handed down in August found at least 30 children had their hearing devices incorrectly programmed at the hospital over several years. Officials are still conducting assessments on people who went through the hospital's implant program, dating back as far as 1991. A British teenager found safe in southern France after disappearing 6 years ago will soon be on his way home. Alex Batty was just 11 when he vanished with his mother and grandfather and forced to live in a spiritual commune. But he bravely left and spent days walking alone in the wilderness before being found by a delivery driver.
It was on this roadside in the middle of the night that Alex Batty's ordeal came to an end. Rescued by a passing delivery driver who had no idea who his mystery passenger was.
He was walking in the middle of a forest in a remote spot, a 20-minute drive from the nearest village, and that was unusual. There was no explanation for someone to be out walking around there so late.
Alex was just 11 when he was whisked away from his family in England, supposedly on holiday to Spain with his mother and grandfather, but then cut off from any contact. For 6 years they moved around, living in so-called spiritualist communities, most recently in the French Pyrenees.
When his mother suggested that she was thinking of leaving for Finland with him, this young man realised it was time. He decided to leave the place where he was staying with his mother and walked for 4 days and 4 nights.
He was then rescued by the delivery driver, who contacted local police. He also let Alex send a message to his grandmother, his legal guardian in England. It read, "Hello, Grandma, it's me, Alex. I'm in France, Toulouse. I really hope that you receive this message. I love you. I want to come home." French police believe the boy's grandfather died about 6 months ago, and along with British police are trying to piece together what has happened to Alex in the past 6 years.
He's getting well cared for by the French authorities at the moment there in Toulouse. We're in close liaison with them and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and our priority is to get him back to the UK.
A welcome reunion awaits. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
An autopsy has revealed actor Matthew Perry died from the acute effects of the drug ketamine. The 54-year-old was found unresponsive in the pool of his California home in October. People close to the Friends star told investigators he'd been undergoing ketamine infusion therapy, which is used to treat depression and anxiety. The Los Angeles Medical Examiner said Perry also drowned, but it was a secondary factor in his death. Former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani has been ordered to pay more than $220 million to 2 women he falsely accused of election fraud. A judge had previously found Mr Giuliani liable for defamation after he claimed the Georgia poll workers helped rig the 2020 election. A jury found they should be compensated for reputational and emotional harm. Mr Giuliani has vowed to appeal the decision.
I am quite confident when this case gets before a fair tribunal, it'll be reversed so quickly, it'll make your head spin.
There's been a groundswell of support around Australia for Palestinians fleeing Gaza and arriving here on temporary visas. Warehouses are filling up with donations, families are opening their doors, and health professionals are volunteering their time and skills.
This Palestinian family is moving into their new home in Sydney. Just 2 weeks ago, they barely escaped with their lives from Gaza.
Don't ask me how I'm feeling. I still can't collect my thoughts at this moment. It feels like my head is being crushed.
Ali lost 23 family members in one night. She wants to remain anonymous because she's worried about reprisals against her husband. He's still stuck at the Rafah border with Egypt, waiting for approval from Israeli and Egyptian authorities to cross.
He's an old man, 69, almost 70. None of his children are there. He's all alone. Can you imagine?
Like her, he's one of 860 Palestinians granted Australian visitor visas. But only a fraction of them have been able to get out of Gaza. The ones who have are arriving in Australia with not much more than the clothes on their back.
We're going to get now a big truck coming in, and apparently there's going to be a lot of food.
Community groups all over the country have sprung to action.
We're accepting everything from food items, toiletries, bed sheets, donors, clothes.
This warehouse space was donated too.
It's heartening actually to know that there are so many people out there who have responded to our donation drive.
This little girl brought her piggy bank.
You saved all that money for the Gaza kids? Sorry, guys.
Dozens of shelves have already been filled with all kinds of supplies desperately needed by the Palestinians arriving from Gaza. But more than food, clothes, and toiletries, what many of them will need is a place to stay.
With what we've gotten is probably about 15 homes ready to go. So as families come in and housing is needed, then we furnish the property and move them in.
Rabia's charity has already helped Ali and several other families move into fully furnished homes rent-free for up to a year.
Someone who's given us 3 apartments in Villawood, someone who gave us a house in Greenacre, some real estates jumped on board. He said, look, whatever you need, we're happy to get. There was another guy who had a house up for lease, gave it to us for half the price.
In Melbourne, more than 400 doctors have signed up to provide free health services to Gazans with no access to Medicare or work rights.
They are broken in many ways. What they've been through is unimaginable. We need to not only address their physical symptoms, such as injuries from war or chronic diseases, we definitely need to address their psychological impacts that they've had.
Despite everyone's efforts, they all agree it won't be enough.
We can only do so much as a community. The government is going to have to step in sooner or later.
A plea for more support for people who never wanted to leave their homeland. Nabila Nashar, ABC News.
The recent death in custody of Indigenous teenager Cleveland Dodd shook Western Australia's youth justice system to its core, sparking high-profile departures and promises of a new culture. But 2 months on, many are sceptical about whether the 16-year-old's death will lead to lasting change. 40 years ago, another teenager, the same age as Cleveland Dodd, died in custody in remote WA. His death was the impetus for the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, and despite more than 300 recommendations, little changed. Dorina Zadvina travelled to Meekatharra for this report, and a warning: it contains images of Indigenous people who have died and distressing content.
There's an uneasy calm in town as Mikathara prepares for the funeral for Cleveland Dodd. He died at a Perth hospital 750 kilometres away after guards found him unconscious in his cell. Authorities say he attempted suicide, but Cleveland's grandmother isn't convinced.
And I'm not going to rest till I get justice for my grandson.
More than 40 years ago, and about 1,000 kilometres north, another WA town was grappling with the death of an Indigenous teenager. Both boys were 16, both died in custody. That teenager was from Roebourne. His name, John Pat. He was arrested after fighting with officers outside a pub.
Police say he fell accidentally, but witnesses watching from across the street say this beating took place.
John Pat's death was considered a catalyst for the Aboriginal Deaths in Custody Royal Commission. At his funeral, the priest blamed the teenager and those closest to him for drinking.
He's gone now. The grog got him.
4 decades on, some Mikathara locals are blaming Cleveland.
He got himself into a spot where he destroyed his own hope.
The Shire President says the town lacks external services to help troubled teens turn their lives around and has offered an alternative.
I think the dog squad would be a start too.
The dog squad?
Dog squad. Dogs only respond to poor behaviour. If you're a nice, polite kid, you have nothing to fear.
In Roebourne, officers involved in the night of John Pat's death declined to give evidence at his coronial inquest. The lack of answers haunted John's mother.
What happened to him and why the police are still on the job?
Cleveland's mother is plagued by similar questions.
I wanted people to be accountable and people to be charged for what happened to Cleveland.
The state government has apologised to Cleveland Dodd's family, conceding his death was preventable and promised a raft of changes.
We have laid to rest Cleveland.
But will it be enough to shift the narrative 40 years into the future? Darina Zadvirna, ABC News, Mikathara.
And if you or someone you know needs help, please contact 13 Yarn or Lifeline on 13 11 14. Christmas is a time for many of us to get together and celebrate the end of the year. For one group in regional South Australia, a festive season disco for people of all abilities provided a rare opportunity to hit the dance floor.
Mid-North resident Chloe is getting her hair done for a special occasion. She and other disability support service clients are getting ready to attend a disco with a difference. Held in a newly renovated sports precinct in Port Pirie, accessible by elevator, the disco was attended by members of the community living with a disability and their carers. Face painting was on offer, as well as a chance to meet some creepy crawlies and furry friends. It's a rare chance for Port Pirie resident Aaron to have some fun on a dance floor.
So do you get a chance to have a disco like this often?
Not really. It's our first time I did.
I like to hang out with my friends and my workers.
Events like this disco provide the 1 in 6 Australians living with a disability the opportunity to come together in a supportive and accessible space. Organised by the local council and support service provider Bedford, it's been a big success.
Disco. I love the disco. I'll give you a 10 out of 10.
They're all so happy and excited to see each other, be able to have an event where they can all be with one another and have their friendship shown, and it's been really lovely sitting up there with them and just seeing them interact.
Working in the disability sector has opened Anna's eyes to what is accessible, and she wants to see it expand in Port Pirie. Making festive celebrations accessible for all. Isabella Carboni, ABC News, Port Pirie.
To sport, and Australia has a dominant grip on the first test against Pakistan in Perth, but Nathan Lyon will have to wait a little longer to secure his 500th test wicket. Australia's bowlers ground down a Pakistan batting lineup which struggled to score, with the hosts now pushing their lead past 250. Lyon took 3 wickets, but the spinner needs 1 more in the second innings to reach the rare career milestone.
Pakistan had frustrated Australia's bowlers on day 2 until late wickets paused their momentum. And it took just 3 balls on day 3 for Pat Cummins to strike again to swing the game Australia's way.
Straight through him.
But Pakistan didn't capitulate. Babar Azam showing his class.
Beautifully driven by Babar.
while Imam ul Haq slowly compiled a half-century of 161 balls.
Imam ul Haq, his 9th Test match 50.
The pair looked comfortable until Mitch Marsh was handed the ball.
Edge and gone!
Sawad Shakil has enjoyed a brilliant start to his Test career, averaging 87 in 13 matches, and he showed no fear against Australia's quicks.
And again, take that.
But Australia's bowlers kept up the pressure and it paid off. Nathan Lyon claiming Test wicket 498.
As he does there, and he's gone.
And then the floodgates threatened to open.
Got him!
What a delivery.
As Pakistan limped to lunch at 6 for 203. The Aussies were enjoying their time in the field, though Stark wasn't having as much fun with the ball. The spearhead struggling for rhythm and eventually leaving the field to apparently review footage. In his absence, Josh Hazlewood and Cummins struck.
Got him, is he? Yes, Osman Khawaja!
And Lions' hunt for 500 wickets continued, removing Amar Jamal thanks to some quick work from Alex Carey. But he'll have to wait for the milestone. Travis Head claiming Pakistan's 10th wicket as the tourists were bowled out for 271. After his heroics in the first innings, David Warner was looking for a repeat, but he fell for a duck as the tourist bowlers started positively. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
Adelaide United has fallen to a third straight defeat in the Men's A-League, going down 1-0 to the Western Sydney Wanderers in Parramatta. Dylan Parias opened the scoring in the first half, flicking the ball over Reds keeper Joe Gauci to score the decisive goal. The Wanderers were made to defend resolutely for the final minutes after Josh Berlanti was sent off for a studs-up tackle. Adelaide hit the post in stoppage time, but couldn't find a breakthrough, suffering a fourth loss in 5 games. Adelaide United has clinched its first win of the A-League women's season, defeating the Wellington Phoenix 2-1 at Marden. Emma Main opened the scoring in the 21st minute as the visitors dominated the opening half. Adelaide levelled the scores with 15 minutes to play, with substitute Emily Condon finding the breakthrough. Nano Sasaki scored the winner in the 85th minute, getting the better of Phoenix keeper Riley Foster from a wide free kick. Adelaide's WNBL struggles have continued, with the Lightning going down to the Bendigo Spirit in a 4-point thriller in Geelong. The Lightning only trailed by 1 point in the final minute, with a 28-point effort from Lauren Mansfield, keeping the visitors in the contest. But a clutch three-pointer from import guard Meryn Cracker pushed the home side out of reach, and the Spirit held on to win 81-77. It was a 6th straight loss for Adelaide, which sits in 7th spot on the ladder with just 2 wins from 10 games. Time to check the weather details now, but first to look at tonight's photo of the Bondley Hall, taken at Rockley and sent to us by Peter Gaston. It was mild and partly cloudy in Adelaide today, reaching a top of 21.6 degrees around 3 o'clock this afternoon, after an overnight low of 14.4. It was fine and mostly sunny across the state today, with some light showers over the southern agricultural area. It reached 35 degrees in Coober Pedy, 29 in Woomera and 21 in Mount Gambier. Thick cloud in far north Queensland with ex-tropical cyclone Jasper is still generating intense rain and a few storms, while troughs over the NT and southeastern parts of Queensland will bring showers and some severe storms. A broad trough will also draw heat across the interior and cause unstable weather to increase across WA's east and our state's west. Around the country tomorrow, a scorching top of 40 degrees for the Alice, mostly sunny and 29 in the national capital, 24 in Melbourne, 22 in Hobart and 30 for Perth. Back home, a very hot and sunny day for much of the north tomorrow, apart from some gusty thunderstorms forming west of Ceduna, a top of 37 degrees for Lee Creek and 34 in Port Augusta. It'll be warm and sunny further south, with a possible late shower or two about KI in the lower Eyre Peninsula, 30 degrees for Clare and 29 in Lameroo. A strong wind warning is in place for the far west coast. Fine and mostly sunny across Adelaide tomorrow. It'll reach 27 degrees in the city after dropping to a low of 12 overnight. On the waters, variable winds to about 10 knots, becoming easterly and increasing to 15 knots in the evening with seas below a metre. The sun will rise at 5 to 6 and set around 8:30. Looking further ahead, a shower or two and 28 degrees on Monday before a warm and mostly sunny remainder of the week, with 22 on Wednesday, 25 on Thursday, 29 Friday and 27 this time next week. And that's the news this Saturday from all the SA News team. Enjoy your evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.